This might just be a me thing, but mindlessly scrolling your Steam library looking for something to play when you just don't know what to do is actually the worst feeling ever, and I feel like I could factually prove it. And then eventually all that scrolling takes you to the Steam store page where you just kind of do the same thing again. But recently I found that there's something called the interactive recommender that I didn't know was there before. And by all means, I recommend you try this. But when you do, set the first slider to niche, because doing this is actually more effective than using the indie tag on the store page. This is what led me to finding and purchasing Brutal Orchestra, which is kind of still a miracle in itself, because if you look at the Steam store page, it doesn't do the best job of showing you why its gameplay is different than other RPGs, but it doesn't matter. And of course it's susceptible to the comparison of Earthbound, because what RPG isn't that tries to be funny in any way? But if you really want to compare it to something, it's built more like Inscription and Slay the Spire, if anything. And when I say they're comparable, it's kind of hard to not notice. Progression-wise, it's Slay the Spire. You start off a run, you fully explore it, you fight a boss, you go to the next world, there's 3, and then you fight the final boss. It's that simple. And the only real reason it's comparable to Inscription is because you put units in lanes, but there's like probably totally another game that does that. But there's a whole other combat system to Brutal that makes it so different, because I've genuinely never seen anything like this. It's actually so much fun. But I have to worry about this thing called pacing. I haven't even told you what the game's about. In Brutal Orchestra, you play as the skeleton of a man who was just killed and stuck in purgatory. You then immediately make contact with a quote-unquote cool oil demon who calls himself Bosch. Bosch tells you that the person who killed you is going to arrive at purgatory any day now, and that if you assist him, he'll make sure that that person immediately receives retribution for killing you. And so you set off to find this person to make sure that he's sent to purgatory as soon as possible, getting party members, making money, killing fish. The whole first area is just fish. But within each area, Bosch will give you choices. Blue areas for party members or NPCs, red for combat encounters, gray for shops, and purple for the boss. You'll continue this loop of picking locations to visit until you've fully cleared all the options, and it forces you to go to the boss to go to the next area. But sometimes you'll be able to go to the boss before you fully explore an area, so why not just bum rush and go kill the boss while your party's at a decent amount of HP? Because remember, this is an RPG, and if you're not at a decent level, the boss can and will milli rock on your corpse.
Are not.
Told you.
What?
Told you, bro.
Are you serious?
Told you. Can I Millie Rock?
No. No, you
Okay.
can't.
Sorry. I bet.
No, you can't. You know why?
This ain't
'Cause
And the way that Brutal Orchestra's XP system works is that it's not XP, it's just money. You get money at the end of every combat encounter, or just by finding it lying around in chests. You can then go into the rank up menu and level up your characters, increasing their damage and HP. Certain abilities, when upgraded, will get additional effects, but we'll cover those when I go in depth on a couple of characters later. That should be enough of the basics, so on to the part where I teach you how to actually kill stuff. At the start of combat, your party members enter the 5 slots that you've already predetermined. Each party member's turn comprises of a movement option and an action. In order to perform an action, you need the right amount of pigment. Pigment comes in 4 colors: yellow, red, purple, and blue. How do you get pigment? Punch your neighbor in the throat. You start each turn in combat with 3 yellow pigment to get you started with your main party member. Then, whenever you hit an enemy, you will get 2 pigment of their respective HP color. And anyone's HP color can range from none to one of the 4 pigment colors just mentioned. I know this sounds actually insane, but it's a lot better if you just think of it as, oh, I need blue pigment. That guy's blue.
I have to break your neck. It's just the way it is. I'm just a messenger.
The other thing you have to worry about with pigment is having too much of it. You start each encounter with 10 empty slots, and if you fill up all those slots and get more, you'll start taking overflow damage.
Fuck is this? I got the wrong sandwich. I don't want that shit.
Once you end your turn, you'll take all the overflow damage that you may have had, and the enemies will take their turn. When the enemies take their turn, you can prepare for what they're going to do because you have a timeline at the top of your screen that just straight up tells you. You can move your units in between lanes to try and avoid attacks, because if a creature attacks a lane that's empty, it just misses. Combat's pretty straightforward from there, except for the fact that certain enemies will have certain gimmicks, like if you hit them, they move. If they hit you, they move. If there's 2 enemies of the same gender at the end of the turn, they'll turn into a bigger enemy that can spawn in infinite smaller enemies and will overwhelm you until you die. Everything in the garden just sucks. And that's the basics of combat. I could go into depth about how each basic enemy works and what to look out for in specifics, but there's an entire section that's just buzzwords of passive abilities. And why would you want to talk about enemies when you have a cast of party members, half of which are A tier at their lowest? So wanting to talk about the party members because some of them are just so fun to use and they shine in so many different scenarios, I feel like there's only one proper way to do it. Yes, it's 2024. Yes, I'm still gonna do it. The main thing I'm gonna keep in mind is that there's kind of two types of characters in this game. You're either a damage dealer or you're not. I'm going to be ranking each character on how good they are at either being a damage dealer or not being a damage dealer. And you know it's going to be a legit tier list because I'm going to change F tier. Perfect. Also, because there's like 20 of these guys and you don't want to be here all day, we're doing this lightning round style. Noak, the game would literally be impossible without him because you wouldn't be able to get enough pigment, and he's a free meat shield if you need someone to die to a one-hit attack, A tier. Boyle's a pretty generalist guy. He can do good split lane damage in the early game and he has shields, but he doesn't really shine at anything in particular in the late game, so like mid B tier. Hans. Fire it! Burnout. Literally the hardest hitting character in the game. It doesn't matter if his damage deteriorates because unless you're fighting the 200 health final boss, by the time his damage is fully decayed, everything's already dead and there's no need to use the exit. S tier. Fennec. Yes, shields are good and removing an enemy's abilities can be clutch, but it's a chance to do it on guaranteed damage with yourself, and the inconsistency is kind of what kills it. Low C tier. Anton. Gambling has never felt better. I don't know what it is, but every single time I use him, I always roll like at least the higher number. And randomizing all your stored pigment can be clutch because I know I'm not the only one who suffers when they see their entire storage unit is just purple pigment. A tier. Splig. Manipulating health colors can be good and the healing he provides is decent, but I've never had a scenario where changing someone's health color has won me the battle. Low B. Fight. Basically the Anton of healing, and being able to inflict Ruptured is a very helpful status effect to have. High B tier. Griffin. If you want a consistent damage dealer that isn't going to deteriorate like Burnout, it's Griffin. Also, being able to manipulate and steal the spotlight is just a good thing to have on your party. High A tier. Arnold. Sorry, broski. Dimitri.
There's nothing in our closet.
Clive, not only the most normal NPC in the game, but also we're not gonna ignore the fact that somebody beat the entire game with just him. High A. Cleaver, can do a nice infinite loop if you're given the right pigment colors and just a decent damage dealer overall. B tier. Cranes, technically a decent supply of healing, but overall there's better options than him. C tier. Agon, being able to do a last ditch heal for the battle and just genuinely being able to revive fallen teammates, I don't think I really need to explain myself. High A. And then I just don't have any of these guys. Whoops, sorry, my fault. Finally, I want to wrap up by talking about one of the two final boss encounters at the end of the game. So, if you like what you've seen, and you're not into me literally showing you what the final boss is, go watch a Risk of Rain video, that'd be cool. After you clear the third and final stage called the Garden, you're going to be faced with either one of two final bosses, either Heaven or Osmond Synox. Heaven is a giant ethereal wolf skull, and Osmond Synox is just a dude. We're going to be talking about Osmond. He's only got 4 moves and they're all relatively easy to understand. He hits you for 5 damage, he moves to the left. He hits you for 5 damage, he moves to the right. He chooses a random direction to move into. He instantly kills the opposing party member. The reason why this fight is fair is because if you don't have a full party, or you're running Agon, what you can do is you can manage hitting him as much as you can at the beginning of the turn, scrambling to try and figure out where he's going to end up, tanking all those hits, and making sure he misses his final attack. Another strategy you can go for is to just bum rush and deal as much damage you can on the first turn, have him take out one of your party members, and knock him down in the second turn before he even gets a chance to react. The only issue with that strategy is that he has a second phase. And what could be worse than one Osmond Synox? Osmond and Synox. I shit you not, they did this. Once this happens, if you're not prepared to take out one of his halves, he's definitely going to chew through your party members extremely fast. On one specific attempt, I chose the latter strategy. It ended up being just Noak and him, the day 1 party member versus the final boss. I then realized that I would technically be able to beat him like this because if I used my parry move, I would be able to move him out of the way. I just had to wait for the right combination of his movements and hope I would get lucky and send him the right direction. The only problem with this is that I got so lost in thought that I didn't notice he was doing his best Itadori impression and left writing his way right over to one shot.
Because you said you couldn't live in intrusion. That means you can't hit alone.
Wait, does he just hit you?
Oh wait,
going
he
into
just
the corner
fumbled the
and kill
bag.
you?
He just
Yeah,
killed
good job. I just
Wow.
realized
all that waiting for nothing. This game fucking
all
blows.
this planning and thought process. It's like, yeah, he just moves.
And that's all I really have to say about Brutal Orchestra. I still have more to do. I'm going to attempt to get as many achievements as I can. God knows how hard that'll be. The story it provides is nice, but I didn't want to talk about it because I feel like it's a lot more enjoyable if you experience it completely blind. But yeah, that's all I really have to say. I know this is a different kind of video. I wanted to experiment because, I don't know, it's fun. It was fun to make. Hope it's fun to watch. And that's all it'll really be. I'm going back to college now, so expect even less uploads in the future. Love you guys.